presentation, and after a couple of questions, we are off to lunch. So hopefully you will stay alert and attentive. If you do leave the room, please come back again. It's lonely without you. So the topic of my presentation is focusing on the big wins and the sustainable outcome. So I don't know if Duncan planted this or Sophie, but I do buy into the idea that transformation of procurement is possible through strategic sourcing. So it would be nice to have a discussion afterwards about this, of course. Rolls Royce is a global business providing power systems to support air, sea, and on land. Contrary to what most of the people thought when I left my old company, a pharmaceutical company in Denmark called Novo Nordisk, most people there thought that Rolls Royce was the cars. So I received about 48 emails asking, did you get the company car? No. It's not cars anymore. The cars are BMW. I don't drive a Rolls Royce. So it's power systems. I am Mikkel Larsen. As you can hear on my accent, I'm also from the continent. I'm from Denmark, so I joined Rolls Royce and joined a strategic program. Strategic programs, which is part of Rolls Royce focusing on cost reduction initiatives, either in direct, indirect, or through our engine program, so we are close to the customer. And the story that I'm about to take you through is actually a story about ambition, engagement, and capability, because one of the projects that we have just completed is the transformation of global indirect and transforming the buyers and the commodity leaders in the global indirect organization is all about changing our culture and changing the ambition and engagement and the capability of people to actually go out and influence our internal stakeholders. So what is Rolls Royce if it's not the cars? Well, just to give you a brief idea about this, in civil aerospace, Rolls Royce engines are at any point in time keeping more than 400,000 people in the air. 160 armed forces are relying on our aerospace solution, and that means that helicopters needs to be ready to take off, fighter planes need to be ready to take off at any given point in time. Both in the commercial and in the naval industries, vessels, more than 30,000 vessels are relying on our power systems, and last but not least, we do turbines for the energy sector, the large turbines. So this is, as you can probably imagine, a culture with a strong engineering heritage and a strong engineering mindset, which brings about one or two challenges when you try to change. The company is, even though we talk a lot about recession, the company has a significant growth opportunity in the sense that we have engineers that have designed really innovative and really superior products, and the sales guys, they've also done their share. We have a record order book ensuring that our growth actually will double over the next 10 years. That's significant, but it also means that leadership is now looking towards purchasing to actually control the cost base. We have to increase our margins if we are to pick up with our nearest competitors. We have to really be careful in an industry where you don't always know how you're gonna actually manufacture the products that you are selling. So in order to grow in a sustainable manner, we have to take care of our cost base. And on the right hand side, you will see that it's of course not possible to double revenues without growing our cost base a little bit. But what we have been focusing on in a recent initiative is the indirect cost base, which is the lower blue cost. That will grow from approximately 1.8 billion in 11 to approximately 3.2 billion in 15. So it's not just clips and toilet paper, as you all know. It's much more than that, and quite significant to the company and the company's margins. So how did we go about doing anything about this challenge in procurement? Well, what we did was start off or kick off in 2011 a transformation program aiming to deliver a significant financial contribution to the company and do that in a sustainable manner. We have achieved that. We have achieved that through working specifically in 4 different work streams. The 3 first ones are the cost reduction initiatives or work streams, and the last one is our enabler, making it stick. So it's in many ways fairly straightforward that a way to take out cost is by using rapid repricing, which is just a typical application of commercial levers, renegotiation with the biggest 50 indirect suppliers. It could be as simple as sending them a letter saying, "Dear supplier XYZ, we really like you, we have worked with you for a long time. Rolls Royce has a tremendous opportunity to grow. We would like to continue with you, so please help us reduce our cost base with 20%. Straightforward, right? Yeah, and then you go in and do your negotiation with them. The second work stream is where we do commodity or category deep dives and apply a much more holistic approach to cost. There are 16 commodities in global indirect, and each of them, of course, have different supply chains. Applying a total cost of ownership, applying all the tools in the toolbox, not just using the big club and beating up the supplier, is what that's all about. Sector sourcing, we recognized in global indirect, in Rolls Royce as such, that we're way too Derby-centric. So in order to achieve the results that we were after, we had to go global. We had to incentivize commodity leaders and buyers sitting in Derby to go out to the Americas and to the Far East and actually address the spend out there, become spend entrepreneurs. Because otherwise we're never going to achieve the savings we wanted to. And the enabler is the most important aspect of all of this. During the last 18 months, of course, the business impact and the savings are key, but fundamentally important, and what makes sure that when I leave, when the program leaves, the savings stick and the supply doesn't come back, is that we have the right caliber of people. We recruit and we develop and we retain talent that can actually ensure that we stay on the learning curve, because otherwise this is lost. Ambition. Ambition had to be demonstrated at all levels of the organization, and that's not only in global indirect, but it's also leadership from the functions that we are trying to implement. And some of the key challenges here are that in order to do strategic sourcing initiatives, it's quite difficult if you are a buyer and you have PO orders that you need to raise, or parts that you need to chase in the organization. That will always crowd out the strategic sourcing aspect. So we had to create space and reorganize internally in global indirect to make sure that people could actually participate and prioritize being in a cost reduction program. We had to make sure that people don't use the same levers as they always do. So how do you challenge conventional thinking? I think I'm quite lucky to have been invited in, and I have a couple of colleagues who were invited in. We used external support. We engage with peer companies as well, and all of that is done in order to challenge the toolbox and the conventional thinking you have in the global indirect organization already. Without something new, you can't create results. We also had in Rolls Royce a situation where the culture might be a little bit risk averse, and if you don't reach for the stars, you're not going to get halfway, right? So we had to encourage a culture where people actually risk sticking their neck out and risk falling short of a stretched target, because otherwise the contribution will not be significant. No such thing as a bad idea. On the right-hand side, you see what the impact actually was, and I don't. Is Anne from Dell still in the room, or did she leave? and lift. I really like the question that Anne raised with Les from Eton. So can you give me one example of where a calculated risk was taken? What you see on the bars here is a number of calculated risks taken by buyers and commodity leaders in indirect. Because before we started the program, business as usual was that they generated approximately 1.2% of the indirect spent in cost reduction. That's not very good. We asked them to come with a stretch target, and they said, okay, if we really try hard, we can do 2%. The actual result at the end of having done this transformation is 8%. So people can go much further if you allow them to, by freeing up capacity and allow them to do the value-adding stuff. Allow them to be ambitious. This has already been said quite a lot of times in previous presentations. But in order to realize the full potential in strategic sourcing, you have to apply your demand management and your specification management, and not just look at the tip of the iceberg, which is the margins or the purchase price. So to do this, have your facts straight, will allow you to engage both internally with your internal specialists, as well as having the analysis that allow you to identify ways together with your supplier when you have your collaborative sessions to take out cost through demand management and specification management. Turning every stone means that, okay, challenge conventional thinking, but do it systematically so you're sure you apply all the levers relevant to the commodity. And the early engagement means that it's much more likely that it sticks. Nobody likes to be told what to do. No engineer likes to be told what to do, and especially not from procurement. So it might be that we have a good session, identify a lot of initiatives, and work out that they can consume in a different way, and it's the right thing to do. But if they're not asked early, then they're for sure not going to adhere to whatever we decide, or policies. Just a quick example of one of the. This is one of the commodities that we went through, machine services, and demand management actually means that we have the fact base, and we do engage with our business to identify, okay, there is a machine standing in one side that's not used to the full capacity, and on the next side they could actually use this machine. So it's about engaging and identifying those opportunities in collaboration with the people who has the budget to buy the new machine and lacks the knowledge of, well, there is capacity at another site. We were quite specific when we designed our stakeholder engagement approach in the program. Basically, there's no silver bullet to running a transformation, but the engagement of our internal employees of our business and of the suppliers is key, of course, here. So making sure that we have and follow new working processes that focus on pace and keep people accountable, that's key for the program. Building capabilities through actually going through projects was key. So the must-dos in employee engagement is to have a structured process that apply rigor to a strategic sourcing program and deliver just-in-time training, so people have an environment where they can practice risk-free before they go out and engage people internally in workshops or externally in negotiations. Provide training so people will actually have a good, robust toolbox to do your data analysis, because that's something that we were not very good at in Rolls Royce before this. Supplier engagement, that means, of course, we will still have a confrontational negotiation to take out cost. Let's not fool ourselves. Sometimes that is what's required in this job. But the majority of the costs are probably taken out in collaboration with suppliers, because in many ways they know exactly how Rolls Royce incur cost on Rolls Royce. In order to prepare this, what we actually did was allow time to do dry runs before you go in to have these engagements, and you do preparation in teams, so it's clear who has which roles and responsibilities. It's clear who will present which parts of the analysis, and how do you actually lure out the good ideas from the supplier. And the business engagement, again, if you want to go beyond the commercial levers, you have to engage early. You have to have a good understanding of why is it we are buying the way we are buying. Why is it that engineers are over-specifying certain services or products we buy in Global Interact. It's the only way you can do it. Engage them early, because otherwise they'll not buy into it. And try to brand the initiative a little bit. I think probably wondering why seen that it's called Program Thor a couple of times up there, and that's it is, of course, it's a Hollywood movie with a really buff action star. But in reality, it's also a Norse god, and said in the beginning, I'm from Denmark. A couple of the people working in the program are also from Denmark. Thor is a Norse god, not only for war, but also for courage. And this is something that, from a branding perspective, gives us a lot of opportunities to create some good stories that are communicated across Rolls Royce, and people will now know this quite well. It changes the perception of me when I come to them to talk about cost, because people see this as a vehicle and something that they associate with training and collaborative cost reduction, as opposed to purchasing comes to beat up our suppliers and take away our budget. So I said that this is all about people, and I also said that we are training people, but for me, capability is actually trusting people with the tools, but also giving them the confidence to use the tools in their day-to-day job. And these are just a couple of testimonials from a few of the pretty young girls in Global Interact. One I really like is Sam, who mentioned that she had concerns in the beginning of reaching a stretch target, but really having the time and the support boosted her confidence, so she believes much more in herself and in the approach going into the negotiation, the collaborative cost reduction workshop that she had, and that changes the supplier perception of her as a credible ambassador to go back and change whatever needs to be changed in Rolls Royce. For her, it meant that with one of the big fours accounting firms, she took out more than 30% of the cost. So I really like that, and I really like the personal story behind it. Cost reduction is the greatest team sport. We do measure how well people are understanding the objective of the program, whether or not we believe we can achieve or we can implement the initiatives identified, whether or not they understand their role. And if you see, then the engagement score from a 1 to a 6 was about 3 in the first week, and at the end of a wave we were close to the maximum of 6. And I think for me it's quite important to not only take the temperature of where we are in the project, but also have a good feeling for where we are in the transformation. We do this not only with Global Interact, but as it is a collaboration, we extend this to the engineering community as well. We have to know where they are as well, and they have to consider themselves a part of the team. We need to celebrate our heroes. So booze is an important part of Danish culture, and it's also very important in the UK. So I don't have any trouble with this part of my leadership skill. But it is very, very important that we do make some noise in these programs and we celebrate when something is good, because it's difficult to change, and people will have to be aware and they have to have a desire to actually participate in these things. So what we try to institutionalize, having weekly knowledge sharing sessions and giving a bottle of champagne or wine to the ones that realized a good savings opportunity, or somebody who brought novelty to a preparation of a negotiation. What this does is that it creates a vibe around participating in the program. We also need to create peer pressure, because everybody in purchasing, they want to win, right? So what we do by having these weekly reviews is also to give exposure to the people who are doing good and the ones who want to do good. Yeah, that's important. So in summary, Rolls Royce is in a very good position to grow, and I think that purchasing through Global Indirect has a good vehicle to take out a lot of cost. We are already engaged in direct and in engine programs, so we are beyond proving our ability to generate business impact. I think for me, the biggest influencer, the biggest aspect towards purchasing excellence is our people. If we don't change the ability to engage and the mindset and aspiration of our buyers and commodity leaders, we'll not get there. We'll not get there by having a better fact base or lean processes or anything like that. It's the people. The people needs to have a desire to address the spend. And I've included a quote from one of our founders. Please read that. I think it still stands today. Strive for perfection in everything you do. Take the best that exists and make it better. When it does not exist, you design it. That's what we do in procurement as well. Thank you.